Growing up, I was an N64 kid. I can clearly recount the day my dad brought home a Nintendo 64 for my birthday. I was maybe 6 or 7 years old at the time. I remember the feeling of excitement in the room as my dad was helping my siblings and I plug the system into our TV and booting up Super Mario 64 for the first time. You know the feeling you sometimes get that life can't get any better than this? Something that's become fleeting the older I get. During the 5th generation, I was clearly in the corner of the big N, and rightfully so, as that thing was my escape, as well as the home to some absolute classics. Of course, there was another horse in that race, the PlayStation. I tried to recount when was the first time I saw or encountered a PS1 in person. Whenever I do try to remember, it's sort of a haze. Perhaps it was with my cousin, maybe a kiosk at Kmart. When you're that young, and you have your feet rooted on one side, and that's all you know, it can be hard to see how innovative the other side can be. Seeing the disc cases littered or the store shelves and finding out some of them even have multiple discs, I don't know, but that always made the game seem so much bigger to me. And as I got older, of course I want to play games with some more oomph to them. I started to get jealous of my friends who were lucky to own Sony's debut console. Don't get me wrong, I was still in love with games like Paper Mario and WF No Mercy, but I need to get my hands on games like Resident Evil, Soul Reaver, and Dino Crisis. In 2003, I was finally able to get one of my own consoles, thanks to my sister, who had a boyfriend who was looking to get rid of his. So my sister, being the most awesome sibling she was, took it off his hands and gave it to me. I remember it came with some loose discs, one of those being Final Fantasy VII. Not even like the full game. He literally only had the first disc. And it was so scratched up, the intro cutscene didn't even play. So this critically acclaimed masterpiece of a generation game became a coaster in my household. The biggest benefit of getting PS1 so late in the game is that all the classics pretty much were sold for pennies, thanks to the PS2 being in the market for a few years now. So I had easy pickings. Crash Bandicoot 2 was the first game I picked up on my own, but I was still set to find some games with a bit more shooty blasty. Syphon Filter was a series that made a huge splash on the PlayStation, and it was a game I was made aware of by catching the commercials on TV.
Syphon Filter. Syphon Filter. 989 Studio.
Also had a cousin who was obsessed with the series, and watching him play through the game while I sat back and read the game's manual, I can clearly remember dissecting each character's bio and reading the weapon descriptions. The green and blue hue of the pages stand out to me, clear as day. For myself, it is a game that is so synonymous with the PlayStation 1, and whenever I bring it up to people my age, it always gets a smile out of them. Syphon Filter was first mentioned in a one-page document created by Sony producer David Garcia at 989 Studios. In it were details about a self-action game focused heavily on weapons and gadgets. There was no characters or plot details, only rough ideas for gameplay and mechanics, and the game will put players in the shoes of a super spy. This game plan will get the attention of up-and-coming developers Eidetic Studios, based out of Bend, Oregon. The team consisted of a modest 13 people, and many of them had little to no experience developing 3D titles as ambitious as this. The only 3D title Eidetic ever produced was Bubsy 3D, a 3D platform set up to be a rival to Nintendo's Super Mario 64, but that plan fell right on its face, as this game to this day has landed on numerous worst games ever created listicles. I never played it, but seeing it in action, you know how you can look at a game and tell that it controls bad? I mean, take a look. It's on the screen right now, I'm assuming. Despite the backlash, they weren't deterred, and once again going out of their comfort zone, as stealth action was still a new fledgling idea in gaming. At least it was, until a certain seminal title was unveiled at E3 in 1997. Richard Hamm, the designer for Syphon Filter, recalls first seeing the debut trailer for Metal Gear Solid and feeling a great sense of dread. In an interview with Games Radar, he said, quote, "It looked like Konami were doing everything that we were trying to do, but better." A funny tidbit I didn't know about the reveal is that Konami also had the trailer play at the top of every hour, all day, on a huge monitor to everyone in attendance. That thing was appointment viewing to everybody there. However, the team kept plugging away, determined to forge their own spy adventure. After the first prototype was developed, John Garvin will join the team as an artist and later as a story writer. Eidetic will look to GoldenEye for inspiration, hoping to draw people away from comparisons to Kojima's landmark title. When Garvin came on board, the team only had a rough prototype, which showcased series protagonist Gabe Logan running around in a large subway station, shooting various bad guys. The prototype already had much of its mechanics worked out, including movement and a target lock system, the latter inspired by the original Tomb Raider. One big setback is that Ham was set on making the game designed around the idea that in one hit you're dead. Inspired by John Woo action films, this mechanic was meant to keep the player in constant motion and to help build tension. Garvin talked him into a more traditional health system, and I'm glad because goddamn, the game's already kind of hard enough. Like, why make it harder? Both Ham and Garvin and the rest of Eidetic seem to be out of their element, creating such an ambitious title. So much so that Syphon Filter was on the chopping block constantly due to missing deadlines. Despite that, the team stuck to their original vision, and that was to sell the fantasy of being a super spy, even if it would be considered janky. The team's motto was, bad movies are better than no movies. Sometimes you gotta fake it till you make it. Perfection is such a sought after attribute, especially nowadays, but to see a team not worry about that and just make the best of what they got is inspiring. You don't need a big team and unlimited resources, just a nice solid vision and hard work to make it happen. Much of that hard work was done during the final hours of development, as levels kept getting rearranged, forcing many story rewrites to accommodate. But the game was able to hit the finish line and saw a light of day on February 17th, 1999.
I've got an ID match for Romer on level 1. Your due is on level 2. No location yet for Kravitz, and I don't see any sign of air bomb.
Copy. I'm on my way.
The story of Syphon Filter centers around Gabe Logan and his partner Leon Zing, both working for the agency. Think of them as like MI6 in the Bond movies. They take down bad guys around the world and look sexy doing it too. They're after the terrorist group Black Baton, led by Eric Romer. The group has been responsible for biological attacks across the world. In response, the agency sends one of their agents, Ellis, to investigate one of their drug operations in Costa Rica, but they lose contact with him shortly afterwards. Gabe and Leon go looking for him and find him dead, and the operation was a cover for Black Baton's viral experiments. And the game smash cuts to a duo over in Nepal, where another viral outbreak has taken place, this time leaving a lone survivor. Right as they're closing on Romer, he launches an attack in Washington, D.C., where he plans on detonating dirty bombs. Gabe arrives in the city and battles his way through the streets into the subway system, where he disarms most of the bombs except for one, which was a regular bomb, not a viral one. The subway gets engulfed in flames. To the rebel, he runs into Mara Aramov, a mercenary working with Black Baton. Gabe incapacitates her by shooting a pump-action shotgun right into her dome. She still lives, and points Gabe to Washington Park. After ducking and weaving through traffic and showing off his sweet vertical leap, Gabe gets to the park and helps disarm more bombs and save a few hostages. In Freedom Memorial, he faces off against the group's munitions expert, Anton Gerdou, a Frenchman with an outrageous accent and a love for flamethrowers.
Anton Gerdou. I hope Romer's paying you enough to die for him.
Gabriel Logan, always the optimist. Look around, Logan. This hall contains a mosaic depicting the entire history of your country's wars and aggression. We are about to make an addition to it.
I don't think so, Gerdou. It ends here.
His one weakness, a disregard for the big explosive tank attached to his back. Taking him out takes care of the threat to the city, and the agency continues their pursuit for Romer. As the agency investigates further into Black Baton and their attacks, they discover the involvement of a pharmaceutical conglomerate, Farcom. As a plantation in Costa Rica were growing compound for the company, the head of Farcom, Jonathan Fagan, is headed to a gala inside a museum. So Gabe gets suited up and infiltrates the event and follows Fagan to a meeting with both Aramov and Edward Benton, a man you're only now hearing about, but are supposed to care that he is now a traitor to the agency. This Benton guy doesn't last long, and Gabe is in pursuit of Fagan. He saves him from Mara. Gabe teases her, instead bringing her in for questioning. However, doing so lets Fagan get away. While in custody, she tells him all about Romer's base in Kazakhstan. Damn, these hoes ain't loyal. Gabe sneaks into the base and plants explosives and takes out the commanding officer because fuck it, he's a bad guy, why not? Making your way through the base, Gabe goes toe to toe with a attack helicopter. But before finding out Leon has been attacked by Romer and seemingly killed, a chopper and a whole base of armed men don't stand a chance against the super spy, and Gabe makes a daring escape and blows up this godforsaken base. It's right after this series of levels you get to find out what the hell Syphon Filter even means. Syphon Filter is a virus that can be genetically programmed to specific groups of people, so I am praying that certain world leaders don't decide to play this game and start getting ideas of their own. Your boss, Markinson, orders Gabe to a stronghold in Ukraine where the virus is being tested and take out any scientists he finds and cure any test subjects. Fagan also got himself captured, so it becomes our job to rescue him and bring him in for questioning. Markinson gives Gabe a lift and he makes his way through the stronghold, taking out any lab code he sees and curing the test subjects. Finding his way to the catacombs, he runs to Fagan and gives perhaps the worst interrogation I have ever seen.
Please, don't kill me.
Just relax. This won't hurt a bit.
I'll pay you. How much do you want? Thank God.
Shut up, Fagan. Move. I have him.
Give him 30 seconds to give you the location of the computers, then eliminate
No,
him.
wait a minute. You don't understand. You
Thousands
don't...
of people are dead, Fagan, because of you. 20 seconds.
Wait, you don't understand.
Time's up. Where are the sequencing computers?
An abandoned Soviet missile silo in Kazakhstan, beneath an old warehouse district, all right? All right?
He gives Gabe the location of the sequencing computers. He also tells Gabe of an old missile silo where they plan to launch the virus all over the globe. As Gabe gets ready to bring him in, Fagan mentions that Leon is still alive and he can lead Gabe to her as we follow him where our partner is being held and she has become infected with Syphon Filter. Fagan makes his escape, doesn't make it very far as he runs to Mara.
Please.
They're all the same in the end.
Who also escaped custody again. At this point, taking her out in the subways would have been the right move to make Gabriel. However, she does decide to join Gabe and Leon in stopping Romer from unleashing the virus. I'm sure she's doing this from the goodness of her heart. Missile Silo is under Warehouse District where Romer's men and Farcom soldiers are battling out. Using the fighting as cover, Logan slips by the two groups and into the underground missile silo. Logan finds that Romer has armed a missile with the virus and plans to launch it. And when Gabe finally makes his way to the launch pad, he is too late. He is able to grab the detonation codes for the missile, but your boss, Markinson, comes out of nowhere and reveals he's behind all of it and has been working with Romer to create the virus for the agency. And a supposed antidote you administer to those patients was a form of lethal injection. That bastard. Dastardly bastard. This game gives you little time to bask in this revelation, since Romer comes out of nowhere and just shoots Markinson in the back of the head and runs off. During the pursuit for Romer, Gabe is able to use the missile's detonation codes to disable them while in the upper atmosphere, saving countless lives. With nowhere to go, Romer finally mans the fuck up and faces Gabe. You can try to fight him traditionally, but the devs planted gas grenades in the immediate vicinity, and it only takes one to find and take him out. And they must have planned this out because the green gas is even in the cutscene, so I'm sure there's no other way to do it. This dev scene cracks me up. He's just like, Logan, Logan, Logan. And in the end, evil is vanquished. Mara is captured once again, and the good guys come out victorious. Or so it seems. Mara has escaped a third goddamn time. It is now working with the unknown agent, and they still have the damn virus. The virus is still out there. Ham and Garvin wanted to write a story that dealt with mature themes, and I think they succeeded. The story isn't groundbreaking. Gabe doesn't get much characterization, and Leon's infection is kinda treated with nothing more than a quick remark. The script went through tons of rewrites due to having to shift levels around, so the need to keep the story as fluid as possible meant nothing was able to be solidified due to these constant changes. The story is simple to follow, however it does throw a lot of names at you, which can be hard to follow at first, but you get the hang of it after a while, and plus a lot of them don't last long. The story is a catalyst to get the player into cool locations and scenarios, and at the end it does that job. The gameplay Syphon Filter still holds up. Yes, there is 25 plus years of advancement that makes aspects very janky in comparison. And this was before Resident Evil 4 mastered over-the-shoulder 3D movement. However, the 3D controls are still handled well. The game opts for contained controls, although not as rigid as something you'll see in early survival horror titles. Pushing left and right on the D-pad or control stick turns Gabe, and pushing forward moves him in the direction, and pushing back moves him backwards. You don't need to hold any sort of run button as he does that automatically. Controlling Gabe can get tricky as his turn radius is ridiculous, or if a semi-truck had ice skates instead of wheels. It isn't much of a problem when you're in the open, but it can be a pain in the ass in more closed off sections, like the catacombs. Once again, it was still the early days of 3D action games, and the growing pains are certainly there. Using the R2 and L2 triggers also lets you strafe, and learning to use this with the wonky movement will help with those tougher encounters, or when you are in close quarters. The movement does take time to get adjusted to. Shooting, however, is managed way better. Syphon Filter utilizes an auto lock system to target nearby enemies, and it works quite well, I think. Richard Hamm was inspired by the targeting system in the first Tomb Raider, but felt that system lacked refinement as Lara Croft was limited to aiming to what was only in front of her, and she would do it on her own with no button press. In that aspect, Hamm expanded on that, to auto aim while holding down R1, and he can target the nearest enemy, whether they're in front or behind him, and it still allows freedom of movement. This mechanic really makes taking out enemies in quick succession feel really rewarding and fun. Crouching and standing still will help steady your aim. The auto aim does a good job at targeting the most immediate threat, for the most part. It did have some instances where the targeting system went rogue, but it never led to any cheap deaths. With the way moving and auto aim works, there could be instances of the camera jumping around, leading to some extreme whiplash, especially when Gabe targets an enemy right behind him. Later in the game, enemies will start wearing flak jackets, which protects their bodies. They can still be taken out the traditional way, but this will eat up all your ammo. Your best bet is to switch to manual aim with L1. In manual aim, Gabe must stand still, use the peek around corners, and crouch down, which is useful in taking out unsuspecting enemies. In manual aim, you can line up headshots. These will take out anyone in a single shot. If you equipped a sniper rifle, you can zoom in further for more accuracy, and the scope layout will even tell you which part of the body is being targeted, which is a really cool touch, I think. This will make short work of those enemies with extra protection. Lining up headshots will become crucial in the late game, as levels will have plenty of these guys packing the extra layer of protection. Luckily, Gabe also wears a flak jacket, and this can be refilled either by finding crates scattered around the level, or by taking out enemies with flak jackets with headshots and taking their protection. I love this system of recovery because it really did force me to want to play better. And whenever I was low on health, I'll feel almost relieved whenever I saw an enemy with a flak jacket, because it meant I had a chance to recover some armor. And you'll need it, as Gabe can take that many shots before he goes down. And this game can be rough in the tail end of the campaign. In the last few levels, everyone has flak jackets. And I get it from a story perspective, but I did miss just running and gunning. Stopping to line up headshots is fun every now and then, but when it's every enemy, it does begin to slow the game down. And it felt like padding a little bit. And these guys do that thing where they'll move their heads at the very last second. The arsenal at your disposal is also surprisingly diverse, ranging from assault rifles, shotguns, and grenade launchers, each with their respective ranges and damage outputs. Shout out to the shotgun. In close range, that thing is a beauty and really fun to play with. Switching weapons can be slow. This was before games established the weapon wheel, so you must cycle through your weapons one at a time to get the right one for the job. This will never take more than a few seconds, so I never got upset about it. Right below your health, you'll notice the danger meter. This will begin to fill up when around enemies. This is the game telling you that they are lining up their shots. And when the meter fills up, Gabe will begin to take damage. You can manage it by utilizing the dodge, roll, and taking cover. This mechanic is pretty cool. This is one I don't see implemented into other action titles. Perhaps Uncharted? I think Uncharted is something like this. Let me know. The red flashing meter makes you want to constantly be on the move, and gives you a great sense of vulnerability that helps gunfights feel urgent and just sells the danger. Like, I love it. Gabe will often find himself being unable to shoot his way through his mission due to differing parameters and objectives, so stealth would be your only option. It isn't as fleshed out as its contemporary Metal Gear Solid. There's only one real way at dealing with enemies, and that's lethally. There is no way of ghosting these levels or doing it non-lethally. Everyone has got to go. During my research, I saw tons of recent podcasts talk down on the stealth and dismissing it wholeheartedly. Syphon Filter was one of the first games to do 3D stealth. And yeah, it does get overshadowed by the big dog Metal Gear Solid, which I can completely understand. But to his credit, Syphon Filter does a lot of things right, and has gone on to also influence the genre as well. Gabe does have a radar, but the enemy's cone of vision is not displayed, so knowing when you're out of sight of enemies is quite nerve-wracking at first, so some trial and error is needed to memorize enemy patterns. For the most part, I think I had it down, but there was always one guy who would catch me or were just aware of Gabe. These guards also have a hard time hearing bullets whizzing right by their heads. The Kazakhstan stealth mission has a lot more freedom. Gabe can take out the spotlight to avoid detection and use the sniper rifle to take out enemies from a distance. You could also avoid being stealthily altogether, despite the game highly encouraging it. If you get caught, the whole base enters an alert stage, which means everyone is aware of your presence, so you have to deal with a seemingly unending wave of enemies. Playing quiet will make this level way easier, and I love that. I already found my groove in this mission, and I had a lot of fun picking off enemies, using both my guns and gas grenades. Another favorite is when Gabe is in the silo and must stalk his enemies in the dark. The game gives you a night vision rifle from the start of the level, and it is classic super spy shit. Picking off these guys one by one. These levels are about taking your time, and I feel they do a great job at breaking up all the running and gunning. Yes, I wish the stealth had more variety in ways you can take out enemies. Any awareness of these guys can be really bad. Despite that, the stealth still was enjoyable, and I had a lot of fun with it, especially with that tunnel section. And to be completely frank here, there are only 3 or 4 stealth levels in the whole game, so I don't know why everyone was whining about. The GoldenEye influence is quite apparent. Gabe gets dropped into a location with various objectives to complete. These can differ from level to level. Some of the bigger, more open levels also let you tackle these in any order you choose, and the level layout is good. Objectives are always close by, and it can be fun stumbling on a bomb you have to disarm, or a hostage you've got to save. For a PS1 game, these levels do have some size to them, and I'd often miss that one scientist or bomb, which caused me to backtrack. But it was never more than a 5-minute endeavor back through the level. Objectives can also change mid-mission, due to story reasons like any good spy thriller. I would have loved to have seen more difficulty options, especially once you beat the game. GoldenEye would add new objectives depending on what difficulty you played on. I feel something similar could have been implemented. Triangle is the interact button, and you use this to flip all sorts of switches and jump on a whole number of crates and ledges. Platforming isn't a major part of the game. Gabe can crawl through windows and shimmy along pipes, and the game has great sections where platforming is used in creative ways, most notably the museum, where he makes like Sting and jumps from the rafters. Platforming also has its rewards, especially for the curious. If you see a stack of crates, more than likely there is some sort of weapons or flat jacket at the top. You can't upgrade Gabe in any way. What you see is what you get, but you can find more powerful weapons and flat jackets, which will come in handy. Fighting these can help turn a tide in a level. If you scroll through Gabe's equipment, you'll notice he has a flashlight, which will be used to find hidden caches. If you see an area or a room that is darker than normal, most likely there is some hidden weapons. Using the flashlight will help illuminate these secrets, and some vital objectives can be found this way. I feel perhaps I am spoiled by modern conveniences because goddamn, I got lost a lot in this game. Being a game from the late 90s, there is no objective markers or waypoints. All you got is a map, and even then your objectives are not highlighted. It is up to you to pay attention to briefings and examine the level layout to find out where to go next. And I'll admit, I will get stumped. Being lost in a video game is so infuriating because it is a mix of frustration with the game and yourself. And when you do figure out where to go, it's always the most obvious route. or it was a ledge or window I didn't see the first time. That is why I fully support anyone using a walkthrough in this channel. We are a pro walkthrough community. Let's end that stigma. Use a walkthrough if you have to. Don't stretch yourself out. Syphon Filter does have some rough edges due to its age and hardware, but it's still really good fun. And I almost forgot to mention the taser. The idea of a taser that can take out someone from like 20 feet is so dumb. It can only exist in a video game. The studio wanted a weapon that the player could switch to in a pinch, and it is fun to use, and it can be used stealthily and even take out anyone with a flat jacket. Just aim at their heads. And maybe it's just me, but I cannot use this weapon without burning the enemy into a crisp. Like, it is physically impossible to not do this every time you use the taser. When I think of the aesthetic of Syphon Filter, the one thing that comes to mind is the color green. Man, does this game love green. The bright green and steel blue color scheme is all over the game. The bright green main menu with the characters' models flying across the screen, with their respective names accompanying them. The sleek pause menu, rocking that dark blue, is such a part of the game's identity. The night vision and haze in certain levels is also another standout. The haze and limited draw distance was most likely due to hardware limitations, but that limitation works to give the park mission a great atmosphere, like gaze flying through a rainy night. That's the way I always saw it anyways. That reticle is also a standout, a simple but effective choice that also works well in a gameplay sense, as it always stands out against the various backdrops. The rest of the game isn't just those two colors, however. We get the fair number of blues, whites, and grays to represent the cathedrals, labs, and city streets Gabe will find himself in. Another visual cue that has stuck with me is the text that hovers over interactable objects, and more importantly, when you finally lined up the headshot. Not only does it work for gameplay, by simply letting the player know what they can and cannot interact with, but visually, it adds to the espionage high-tech nature of the game. Despite aesthetic stumbling at the gate with Bubsy 3D, when it comes to making their 3D gaming debut, Syphon Filter is quite impressive. The cluttered, battle-torn Washington streets look great, the blown-out cop cars, and your teammates wearing the hazmat suits fighting off terrorists in the street. Cars are exploding left and right, and dudes are dropping from the tops of buildings. It's also awesome to see a game from this era let you shoot out glass bottles and windows, and this is way before Metal Gear Solid 2. Down in the subway, the train will pass by, and you can almost feel the breeze hit your face. And the ensuing chase in the tunnels is a great spectacle. However, what really didn't age well are the game's various cutscenes. Damn, these are like unintentionally funny. Everyone has like a Lego person build, and that goofy swivel they do whenever they turn to face each other, and these faces. Pinhead Larry looking ass faces. I and Dedek were determined to sell the fantasy of a spy thriller, no matter how janky it came across, and these cutscenes were perhaps given the most liberty. They don't even have fingers, just fists, and character models would be reused for scenes like the party in the museum. But to be honest, it is hard not to get swept up by the charm of it all. Gabe's idle animation is also a standout for me. It's like he's waiting in line or something. And his tactical role still looks cool. And dramatic ways he kills over when he dies is so funny. The enemies are also given a good level of care. They fly back when they get hit, and it helps to sell the impact of the weapons, especially the shotgun. They also roll out of the way of fire and aren't afraid to chuck a grenade or two your way. And the geyser of blood that comes out of them, also a great touch. That run animation has become iconic. Whenever I bring this game up to people, Gabe's run is the first thing they bring up, no joke. And for good reason, no one in the history of running looks like this. It's like both his legs are trying to run in opposite directions, and his arms are using their full range of motion, and then some to compensate. Gabe is like a gazelle out there, look at him, look at his stride. The game's soundtrack was composed by Chuck Dowd. He worked on a ton of games, including Jet Moto 3, 3 Extreme, and Twisted Metal 4. He was sort of the in-house composer for 989 Studios. He is still at Sony as a director of music, and has helped craft the soundtracks for pretty much every first-party Sony title in the last 15 years. The soundtrack is full of thumping beats that help you get into the action. Orchestral strings and the driving drums help to propel the action forward. There's also subdued tracks to help enhance the moments you must go in quiet or when the game needs to build tension or suspense. It's a great mix of synths and other instrumentations that gives each level a great vibe, and it all fits well with the rest of the game. The standout track must be the game's main theme. A song that has endured throughout the rest of the franchise, but a big personal favorite of mine, has to be the tune that plays during the chase with Amar Aramov. It is a track straight out of a 90s dance club. The rest of the sound design is also fantastic. The sound of the weapons is loud and punchy. You can really feel the weight of whatever it is you're firing, from the shotgun's boom to the little pop sound the grenade makes when leaving the M79 canister. Another standout sonically is the sound of the silenced pistol and sniper rifle. That little click noise, it makes perks your ears, and pairing that with the sight of a fallen enemy is just perfect. The sound of glass shattering, the crackling of fire, explosions and death grunts of enemies is all top notch, and it's something you wouldn't expect from a game of this era. The voice acting is very hit or miss, mostly miss.
Where's Romer? Where are the other bombs?
You're too late, Logan.
We'll see.
John Chacon as Gabe Logan is great for the most part, but according to him, this was his first voice acting role, and you can tell during certain cutscenes.
I'm setting a beacon. Wait, Leon, this one's different from the others. It has a shorter timer, and it looks...
Hey, that's not viral. It's
too late.
No shade, he would do a lot better than me. Coming from a background in radio, he had a casting agent friend refer him to 99 Studios for a role in Syphon Filter. He originally auditioned for Romer, but was convinced to go for Gabe Logan instead, due to the possibility of future installments. Channeling Batman and Dirty Harry, he was able to secure the role, and he played Gabe for the initial trilogy. He would also pen a script for Syphon Filter 3 that didn't end up being used. But you can clearly see the guy was very passionate about the series, and has stated that he is willing to come back for a new game if that were ever to happen. 99 Studios was looking for an actor that channeled Harrison Ford. Along with the influence mentioned earlier, Chacon did great. Gabe is a very stoic, down-to-business guy, and he never cracks any jokes. He has only one, maybe two ways of speaking, and any humor you do get from his performance is unintentional, which is good in my opinion. Levity, intentional or not, is always welcomed. The rest of the cast also made up of first-time voice actors, and for some, this is their only voice acting credit. Both Ham and Garvin have said they had cast friends and family for some of these roles, and according to Chacon, the actors would record their lines separately, without one another to bounce from. So often you get these stunted interactions between characters, almost like when you were a kid and you would play with the action figures and you would give them voices. Objectively, the performances are bad, but I don't care. Once again, I find it all charming, especially for a spy thriller that's supposed to take itself seriously. It is a classic juxtaposition that can never go wrong. And I would rather have a bad performance that was memorable than a mediocre one that does nothing to stand out. Syphon Filter was a huge hit for the PlayStation, selling around 2 million units and becoming part of its greatest hits collection, which I'm sure helped sales further due to its reduced price point. After the game's completion and release, the team of Eidetic were given a 2-week vacation, and during that time, Ham and Garvin got to work on the script to Syphon Filter 2, and once the rest of the team got back, it was right back to work on the sequel. The team would release the third game shortly afterwards, and I remember Syphon Filter 3 and Twisted Metal Small Brawl being sort of the swan songs for the PlayStation. I'm pretty sure there was a few sports titles released afterwards, but those two were the last true Sony exclusives to be on the console. The series would enter next gen with Syphon Filter The Omega Strain, an always online co-op shooter, a game I remember wasn't received very well. I don't think people were prepared for an always online game at the time. You have to remember, back then, online gaming on the console wasn't as popular as it is now, and the big companies were still working out the kinks. The game also lacked any single player option. It was possible to play it solo, but co-op is so ingrained in the missions that it almost made it impossible to progress the story. Two PSP titles would follow, Syphon Filter Dark Mirror and Logan's Shadow. These will mark the last mainline titles for the series, as Sony has put game on ice, and the series has been dormant ever since. During this time, Eidetic will be acquired by Sony Computer Entertainment and renamed to Ben Studio. Due to their experience with developing games for portable devices, the studio would bring both the Resistance and Uncharted series to handhelds. The team will start working on an original IP, the first in Syphon Filter, and in 2019, the studio will release Days Gone, an open-world game set in the studio's stomping grounds of Oregon. I remember upon release, the game was sort of met with an indifferent shrug. The game was a victim of Sony's success, due to the countless accolades the first-party Sony games were starting to get, and that really hurt Days Gone, as expectations were high. The game was also plagued with technical issues, and by that point, the zombie craze had died down. I remember this game getting swept up in the culture wars as well. I guess some reviewers had a problem with protagonist Deacon St. John being a white dude. I don't know, dude. I am happy to see that this game has garnered quite a fan base, however, a few years since release, and has even been remastered for the PS5. I did get this game on a sale a few years back, and I enjoyed it, but I think I was fed up with open world games at the time, so I never got to finish it. But replaying it to grab footage for this video, this game is really well made. Deacon is an okay character. I remember him getting better further in the story, but right now, he's still in his asshole phase. But I am invested in his story, and the gameplay is solid. Riding your bike in the open world is fun. And Ben Studios continues to blend action and stealth gameplay effectively, and the zombies, oh I'm sorry, not zombies, freakers, are satisfying to take out. Sadly, Days Gone, at the time of writing, is the last game Ben Studio has released. Shortly after shipping the game, longtime studio director John Garvin will leave Ben Studio, and in June 2025, it was reported that 30% of his staff was laid off after a live service game they were working on was cancelled, and the pitch for Days Gone 2 was turned down by Sony. I'm hoping the studio can pull through, but given the volatile nature the industry has been the past few years, it is hard not to be worried. Syphon Filter released in the shadow of Metal Gear Solid, but has, in my opinion, surpassed that comparison, and the series needs to be given its flowers when it comes to being a part of ushering in the stealth genre and really showcasing what the PlayStation can do. The last morsel we had from the series were Easter eggs in Days Gone, but since then, fans have been starving for any sort of information. The whole series, except for the Mega Train, has been made available on the PS5 thanks to the PS Plus Classics, and my hope that this will allow people a chance to experience the series. Gabe is proud to make a comeback. Sam Fisher's locked in the Ubisoft jail, and Solid Snake has sailed into the sunset. So now more than ever, it is time for Syphon Filter to have its day in the sun. And I hope that day comes sooner rather than later. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thank God.
Shut up, Vagan. Move.